Yo, it's your boy Bryant Jennings, and right now you're watching True School Sports. Yeah, though.
Hey, what's going on? It's your boy BT, and I came here to talk some boxing with the thousands of True School Sports subscribers. Now, heavyweight boxing talk. We're going to talk about Bryant Jennings because recently some news is posted about him, and obviously this weekend he's going to be fighting on the untelevised portion. Well, actually, it'll be on the ESPN app, so you can watch it on the ESPN app. But still, the untelevised portion of the Terrence Crawford, Julius Indongo undercard for the top rank on ESPN this weekend. So he'll be fighting this week, which is good to hear because the last time we saw Bryant Jennings in the ring was against Luis Ortiz, and that was like late 2015. So he's had a 20-month layoff, and he recently signed with Top Rank, and they got big plans for him. Bob Arum and company had big plans for him, as he stated in this article that I'm reading through right now. So he's fighting a guy named Daniel Martz, 15-4-1, 12 KOs, in an 8-round tune-up. So he needs to get past that. And then what Bob Arum recently stated was that if he beats this guy that he's fighting, and then he fights a more notable fight, let's say November or December, he fights a more credible opponent, beats them, then he's going to look to put him right into a world title fight around that third fight. So he needs to do his job, and Arum said he's going to do his. But here's what he said in regards to Bryant Jennings and just some of the plans that he has for Bryant Jennings. Here's what he said. I quote. He said, I quote, if all goes well in that fight, we'll try to make a world title fight for him. I'll try to make Joseph Parker against Bryant Jennings on ESPN in the United States next spring. End quote. And that's what it is. So, Bob Arum is looking to, give Bryant Jennings a chance to prove himself, to become a world champion, because this was a guy, if you guys remember, he was coming up the ranks real quickly. He's beating the guys like, good, solid contender level fighters, guys like Mike Perez, guys like Artur Spilka. And then they kind of just, Gary Shaw and those guys, they kind of just fed him to the wolves. They made this guy fight Vladimir Klitschko and Luis Ortiz back to back. And at that point in time, those two guys were arguably 1A and 1B in the division with as far as their skill levels and how great they were fighting at the time, So he was really put in tough, and he hasn't fought since he was put in that tough. And he's lost some time in his career, and now he's trying to make that time back up. And Bryant Jennings, he's someone that's a friend of the channel. I met Bryant Jennings numerous times, about 3 or 4 times I've met him. He's a cool guy. Last time I saw him was in Las Vegas in June at the Kovalev War Fight. And if you guys saw, I interviewed him, and this is all when the Top Rank, him signing with Top Rank news was coming out. So he seemed very excited. He seemed like he was in good spirits, and I'm looking forward to seeing if how he looks in the ring. I think the division would be better with him because it would give us another name. Obviously the one fight that we were talking about that was being talked about, especially over across the pond, was him versus Dillian White, because they had their whole scuffle when he was over there, and it's a very makeable fight, and I think it's a very makeable fight just for the simple fact that, you look at this fight on Top Rank on ESPN, Crawford and Dongo, White's also on this undercard as well. So, it shows that Eddie Hearn and Bob Arum will work together. It shows that they'll do business with each other. So it will make sense if Bryant Jennings can get this fight out the way, get a W. Maybe his next fight could be against Dillian White. We just don't know, but it's good news that someone's looking out for Bryant Jennings, because I don't feel, with all due respect to Gary Shaw and those guys over there, I really don't feel like they looked out for Bryant Jennings, because this is a guy that was showing improving against good opposition. And then, they got him the big fights, which is great. But then after he lost those 2 big fights, we never heard anything from them again. So it is what it is. That's the business of boxing. It's shady business, but it is what it is. So that's what Bob Arum is saying. He's saying that he will probably try to put Bryant Jennings in a title fight against Joseph Parker next spring, and that wouldn't be a bad fight. I think for Bryant Jennings, that could be a very winnable fight. One thing I will say about Bryant Jennings' skill set, he doesn't necessarily do anything great. He does a lot of things kind of well, but he doesn't do anything great. Nothing really sticks out about his skill set. But he is a very athletic fighter. He's a very athletic fighter, and I'd be interested to see how he tried to beat Joseph Parker. Joseph Parker, obviously, when you look at the landscape of the division, you would be led to believe that either him or Deontay Wilder are the most beatable champions right now, because for the simple fact that Parker, uh, as good as he is, he has good power, but he's still very raw, and he's still kind of figuring himself out as a fighter, and he's not as big as the other heavyweights in the division. So he's a more winnable fight. A lot of people view him as a more winnable fight. Still a good fighter, but more winnable fight than, let's say, Anthony Joshua. And Wilder, he's got that one-hitter quitter, but we know that he's got his deficiencies as well. So I've always wanted to see what Wilder would do with someone like a nice athletic fighter like Bryant Jennings. Because if you look at like the guys Wilder's been fighting, he's been fighting like Chris Ariel out of shape. He fought Gerald Washington, who doesn't really move that well. Good fighter, solid fighter, especially on last minute notice, but not the most athletic fighter in the world. Artur Szpilka gave him trouble, but Artur Szpilka is not as athletic as Bryant Jennings. So I don't know. I've always thought Bryant Jennings versus Wilder would be an interesting fight. So we'll see what happens. But it's good to hear that Bryant Jennings is being looked after, and that you'll see him, back in the ring. So big shouts out to Bryant Jennings. Let me know what you guys think about Bryant Jennings and Bob Arum, what he said about getting this man a world title shot next spring. Is Joseph Parker versus Bryant Jennings a fight that you guys would like to see? And if so, who do you see winning that fight? And just let me know what you think about Bryant Jennings being back in the division and what that means to the overall landscape of the division. Let me know in the comments down below. Take the time to subscribe, and you can love me or you can hate me, but I'm just a kid from Dania. So until next time, take care, guys.